Hey everyone, welcome back to Houseplants Gone Wild. My name's Kelly. Today I wanted to do a update on one of my previous videos, and that's all my water propagations. So I took quite a few, all of them were water propagated. I did also end up taking a few cuttings from my pink princess philodendron, which I'll add into this video. That I did about a week ago. So that's not quite ready to go into soil yet. The roots haven't come out and started to develop in the water. So I'll hold off on that, but for the rest of them, I think they should all be ready, mostly. A few of the plants are a little bit slower to root in water, such as the, Ficus elastica, the rubber tree. It does root in water. I've heard that you have to use layering to get them to root and to propagate, and that's where you get some sphagnum moss and you wrap it around the trunk of the plant, and eventually it'll put out roots, but I've never done that. I've always ever water propagated them and I've had great success, but they are a little bit slower. I hope you enjoy this video, and if you have any questions about my methods about propagating, or if you have anything that you've propagated that you'd like to share, please leave a comment down below, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I should also probably mention that not all of them were water propagating, because I do have this Hedrohelix, and this is also known as English ivy. So I put this one straight in soil. I can feel when I pull them a little bit, they do feel like they're starting to stick into the soil. I'll pull one up and see if I can get some roots for you. This one here, I do keep it in our little humidity box. I have a couple other seedlings that I have in there. I have some of the mimosa plant, the sensitive plant. I got some seeds off Amazon, so I have about a dozen of them that are just starting to sprout up, which I'll show you in a minute here. But they do have little tiny roots. Let's see if my camera will focus. Maybe not, but it has little tiny roots on that little clump of soil there. So those are slowly developing, but once again, I'm trying to keep them in the humidity box because that way they have a little bit of an extra advantage just with the warmth. Helps with root development and moisture. They are a plant that doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance, I guess. I've heard that they're very common for spider mites, but I've never had them on here or on these plants. And I do keep them fairly moist in the soil. I have a more heavier cocoa coir mixture for them, just to help keep that soil a little bit more moist for longer. And then I let them almost fully dry out before I water them again. So walking over, here's the humidity box. Have the grow lights, humidity mat underneath. I did put some moss in here to help with keeping the moisture more along the bottom and to sort of give it aesthetic appeal. So right here I have the Hedrohelix underneath this Cebu blue. This Cebu blue, it was just a small cutting that I got, so I placed it in here and it's putting out lots of new growth. These here are the sensitive plants that I have. They're slowly coming in. With the humidity box, I do have to check it more periodically because with the heating mat underneath, I find that once it starts to dry out with the plants, they dry out really quickly because it is warm. So with keeping the doors closed, it seems to help keeping the humidity in, and the soils do dry out a lot slower. So with keeping your plants in a higher humidity area, the reason I got that fan is for air circulation. Because the humidity is so high in that box and it's warm, you can get mildew or sort of like a white powder that develops on the leaves. It can develop really quickly, so that's something to be very mindful of if you have your plants in sort of a terrarium setting. You want to make sure that that air is circulating around them, so that way you're not getting any mold or any sort of infestations. Fungus gnats are also a pretty big one, so I keep that door closed most of the time, just because if you get a fungus gnat in there, they can quite rapidly multiply, and then it can get out of hand quite quickly. So moving on, this plant is the Ficus elastica, the rubber tree. This is slower for rooting in water, but it does work quite well. But because I took this cutting about 2 weeks ago, it is a lot slower. The roots are you can just see where it's starting to pop out. New growth. There's little sort of white bumps here. That's where those roots are going to come out. And I'll show you the Schefflera, the umbrella tree. So I took this cutting probably a month ago, and it's the same thing. It is quite slow. It puts out these little bumps, and then eventually it will root. So it puts out little bumps like this, and then eventually get a nice healthy root. This I might wait till it gets a little bit longer, just because it's nice to have sort of a more developed root system, or a fuller root system before going into soil. It just makes the transition a little bit less difficult for the plants, because it can be quite stressful for them. A lot of times when you do transition from water to soil, you can lose leaves. I've noticed that with the rubber tree, with the Monstera addisoni, if you have more than one leaf on a cutting. Monstera deliciosa, sometimes these leaves, they just they turn yellow, they dry up, they brown, they crisp, and they just fall off. But yeah, so for the rubber tree, this one will be probably another month. And when I do go to put it in soil, I will leave a post on my Instagram, houseplantsgonewild, and I'll update it from there. So with the Monstera addisoni, these leaves are some of the bigger ones that I wanted to sort of start a new plant, see if by starting with a larger leaf, maybe I will start off getting some new growth that has larger leaves. But these have been in here for about 2 weeks and almost ready for soil. It's usually, yeah, that could probably go in soil. I find with the Monsteras, these aroids, I find it's sometimes better to just wait. Wait until the roots are more than just a couple inches long. Wait till you get maybe like 1 or 2 additional roots to just the first one that comes out. See if I can find one here. So all of these have just basically 1 root. This one here has 2 roots. But as you can see, this is that end cutting where at the very end of the vine that I cut off, this was supposed to be a new leaf, and it just kind of crisped up and died. So I can just pull that right off. But this one will take a lot longer, just because I found that with the end cuttings, they're a little bit slower to root. Whereas if you take from sort of the mid stem, it's a lot faster. So this one here was actually kind of sitting on the very end. I took that cutting off, and this one here much faster. For my main propagations, they're usually pothos. They're super fast, so easy to propagate. This was some of the golden pothos cuttings that I took behind me on this wall. It's kind of hard to see with the lighting. I put all the other pothos, but with the abundance of golden pothos that I had, I just kind of stuck them in water. Some of them actually, as I can see, they're not even in water anymore. There's so many cuttings in here that they've used up a lot of water. So with a small container like this, you can see how that water level is getting quite low. With cuttings, you want to make sure that those newly developed roots do stay in water. Otherwise, they will wilt and dry quite quickly. But all these roots are, most of them are about 1 inch long now, so they're probably ready for soil. So you can see there's a couple longer ones, couple shorter ones up here. So I'll probably take the longer ones and put them in a small sort of 4-inch nursery pot. This is some of the pink princess philodendron cuttings that I took. This is one of them. I took a total of 3. But I just put it in this small jar of water. They do weep sort of a bright red or dark red sap. This one here, it's got sort of those little bumps right here, that's the aerial roots, so that's where the new roots are going to come out. It's a little bit slower right now because I did just cut them about a week ago, but some of the leaves have a little bit more pink on them. I tried to cut it back till I could see more pink on the leaves, but this one here does have a nice pink streak going down the middle, so hopefully the new growth does have a little bit more pink than this green and brown color. Some of the fastest to root and the easiest, like pothos, are syngoniums, arrowhead vines. So these ones here, I have 2 cuttings in here. I think I took these about the same time, but lots of roots. Both of them have lots of roots. So with these ones, they're ready for soil, and when you do put them in soil, just give them a little bit of a medium to bright indirect sunlight. Want to keep them away from cold drafts. Like that with any cuttings, you want to make sure that they're staying warm and they're not drying out fully for the first couple of weeks. I found with cuttings that when you're going from water to soil, it is quite stressful, and by keeping the soil at sort of a room temperature, not letting it get too cold and not letting it dry out, it makes that transition much easier. This is another one of the Pink Princess philodendron cuttings that I took, and already it's starting to push out 2 little roots right here. So slowly coming along, but I will wait till these are about 1 inch to 2 inches long, and then I'll put them in soil. The syngoniums, I did do a little bit of an experiment where I tried one with just tap water. Then I also added another one with some nutrients in the water, and then another with some rooting hormone dabbed on the end. So this is the one that had just straight tap water. Let's see if I can get it out here. This one with just the tap water, it actually rooted the fastest and has the most roots on it. Nice long roots already and ready for soil for this one. So this one had the Cola brand plant food, and then this one here had the Technoflora root tech hormone. So this is the one with the just plant food in the water, some good long roots there, ready for soil, and then this one here is with the rooting hormone. The roots are quite underdeveloped compared to the other ones. So this one here, I will just wait. I might just stick this straight in water without any additives, and that way I can just get it rooting, trying to catch up to the other ones here. This one here, I will be putting in soil as well today. So for the Hedrohelix that I did put in water about 2 weeks ago, and these are the roots. They're quite fine. There's quite a few on them, quite a few roots, but just something to be mindful when you're pulling them out, putting them back in, checking on them. Try not to disturb these little delicate roots too much, but this one here, I'm thinking it's ready for soil. They're a couple inches long. There's lots of roots on there, and for what I have found, they're quite resilient plants. They don't require a whole lot of light, so I'll just put this in soil, and I might even stick it in that 4-inch pot that I have in the humidity box, just to kind of give it a little bit of a fuller look. This is another one of the syngoniums. This is the Berry Illusion that I had just in water. Some nice good long roots. So this one here as well, also ready for soil. So this here is my little propagation shelf. I do see here that one of the plants did not make it. I believe this was a Scindapsus pictus exotica. Did not root really well, and no roots, yellowed, so I'll just check this one. Scindapsus pictus, they are a little bit slower to root, but some of them, some of the other cuttings, they are ready to be put in soil. So I'll start here at the bottom. I have a Pothos Enjoy, and that one there has rooted and is ready for soil. This is a Philodendron micans, so also it's got a couple of the smaller roots on the side there and a longer root, so that one could wait a little longer because it's quite small, but I might put it in soil. And then a golden pothos, which has just a few smaller roots. For the golden pothos, they are quite resilient, I've found, with propagating, so I could wait because this one here only has a few small roots, but I might just stick it in soil because they're quite hardy when it comes to transitioning from water propagating to soil. So this little leaf here is a Pothos Enjoy, and also has a nice long root, roughly 1.5 inch long. So this one here is ready for soil. This Philodendron cardatum, the green heartleaf, it is not quite ready for soil just yet. I find with philodendrons it's best to wait a little longer. It has just a small root. But with philodendron, unlike the golden pothos, I find that if you stick them in soil too early, they, with underdeveloped roots, they can rot out quite quickly. They don't do the transition quite as well as pothos, so I'm going to wait on this one for a little while yet. One of the other plants is a silver Ann pothos, much like the Scindapsus pictus exotica, little bit smaller and different shape to the leaves. This was an end cutting, so I left an extra leaf on it to help it with its energy and get those roots out. But this one here did put out about 1 inch long root so far, so this one here could go into some soil. So this one is the Scindapsus pictus exotica. Quite a bit of a larger leaf, a little bit more of a curl to it. This one is one of the ones that is starting to push out roots. They are a lot slower, I've found, but it has a little tiny root starting to come out there. So for these ones, I'll wait probably another week or two till they're about 1 inch or 2 long, and preferably with a couple of roots coming out. Another one is the marble queen pothos. Kind of like the golden, a little bit more of a cream color and a lot more splashes on the leaves. This one does have a nice long root there, so I didn't get many cuttings from this one, but this one here is ready for some soil. So I'm gonna probably put this one just in a pot by itself, just a small pot, and then eventually it'll vine. It'll just be not a very bushy plant, but a very, hopefully one day, a long trailing plant. One of the other cuttings I don't believe I included in the last video, hang on, let's go this down, is Maranta. So this one here I cut just below node, and no roots on it yet, but I did take this one, I believe, roughly the same time I took the Pink Princess. And so you just want to get a stem cutting and then make sure that the stem, as well as this node right here, is submerged in water, and that's where the roots will come out. So this one here has a mixture of Scindapsus pictus exotica, so larger leaves like this one here, as well as some on this other one here, some silver Ann, and there is a cutting in here that I saw that had just one cutting that had super long roots. So the one with super long roots, surprisingly, is actually the exotica, which are usually quite slow to root. But I have it in some water with 2 silver Ann pothos cuttings, which haven't rooted yet. But that one there has a single really long root. So this one here is actually ready for soil. This one I might just put once again in its own 4-inch nursery pot, like the marble pothos, and that way one day I'll have just an individual long trailing plant. But for these ones here, these silver Anns, they haven't rooted yet, so I'm just gonna hold off on them for now. The other one that I did in the previous video is the Senecio, so this is the string of pearls. It has begun to root. but it's a little bit of a slower grower when it's starting off like this. So in another month, eventually it'll start to fill out, and eventually it will trail down the sides. I did recently visit some family, and they had a Christmas cactus. So that's just a small cutting. I broke off a piece, stuck it in some soil. Hopefully by Christmas I'll have a little bit more of a cactus, but I doubt it's going to flower this year, just because it's a little bit late to be propagating and trying to expect a whole lot of root development plus it flowering. It takes a lot of energy for both. So the other one is the Ficus elastica tiki. So this one here I took in the previous video. It is in there nice and firm. It had some roots that came off with it. I do have this one kind of tucked in the back corner here against the window frame. That way it gets direct morning sunlight, and then in the early morning or late morning it gets a little bit more of just a bright indirect light all day. And that's just enough. These can actually burn quite quickly if you leave them in direct sunlight for too long. So the next one here I have on the windowsill is a woody-eyed, the string of hearts. So these were just a few cuttings that I took, stuck them in soil, put them in terracotta so that way they can wick away any extra moisture. This one is quite dry, I can feel, so with these cuttings I'll have to make sure that the soil doesn't fully dry out. This one here does need a little bit of water, so let's give it a little splash. So this is the mother plant that I took those cuttings from, the string of hearts, and it's even, see if I can find one, it's even flowering, which I don't know. They, I guess they flower quite often if they get lots of bright indirect light. But I've never actually had them flower on me before. Here I am just tangling them up, trying to keep them as nice as I can. But this one here is in its original nursery pot. They don't have a very deep root system. So this one here I can probably just leave it in this pot for at least another year, maybe 2. With having it on the table, it will get more of a bushier top portion of it. Camera's shaking. Just because that's where the higher light is up top here coming in from the window, whereas down here the trailing sides won't have as much light, so they might become quite leggy. Another string of hearts cuttings that I took, put them in this little 4-inch nursery pot. I took a few that were actual strings, but most of them were just individual leaves that I stuck in the top, and starting to get lots of new growth. So eventually this will sort of fill out and then cascade over the side. So another one of the plants that I had propagated in my previous video was the leaf cutting of a Ficus altisma. And it's just in water. It's a little bit slower as well because it is just a leaf cutting. It's kind of hard to see, but there is some little white bumps that are coming out the bottom there. So this one here will probably be another 2 weeks before it's got some roots. Once again, I'll update this on my Instagram at houseplantsgonewild, just for some of these other plants that are a little bit slower that I wasn't able to fit in this video. For some of them that are a little bit quicker, like the syngoniums and some of the pothos, I did want to get those in soil before they're in water for too long. So I figured I'd bring my propagations to the backyard. Sorry it might be a little bit noisy because there's a lot of traffic out front. Some of the plants I decided to propagate them actually. So I have them all here in the tray, including this Chef Lara. It did have that about 1.5 inch root, and as well as a couple other little ones that are sticking out. So I'll put that in soil. So for this one here, it is a bit of a larger canopy, so I can't put it in a larger pot. I do have smaller 4-inch pots, which I use for a lot of my cuttings. With it being in a larger pot, it is going to hold on to moisture longer. So that's one thing to be mindful of when you are transplanting or putting plants in your pots, is the size. But with it being from a water propagation, It's okay if it holds on to a little bit more moisture till those roots start to develop in the soil. The mixture that I'm also going to be using for almost all my plants is my typical 40% coco coir, 40% or 30% orchid bark, and 10% worm castings, and then some perlite as well. And I find that mixture works well for almost all my plants. Sometimes I will put a little bit more perlite to give a little bit extra drainage, depending on the size of the pot, the plant, and just how much care I'm going to be giving it. So for this one here, all I'm going to be doing is scooping up some soil into the pot about halfway. Now these roots on the side, these little nubs, are quite delicate, so I'm just going to gently stick that in, and then I'm going to fill it up. I'll use this pot here. I'm going to fill it up until those roots are just submerged. And it's okay if it's a little floppy in the soil. You don't want to compact it down too much. Because once you water it, that water will wet the soil and sort of act like a cement. So I'm just holding it there. I've got it just so that right below the soil here, there's some of those roots sticking out. And then I'm just gonna water it around, make sure that soil is acting as a sort of a cement, make sure it's all wet. There we go, and it's draining out the bottom. That's about it for this one. For the Maria, these ones here with these roots, these are the ones that I was trying out the different water, tap water versus a water additive. These two I'm just going to stick in the same pot together, just a little 4-inch pot till they develop. And same soil mixture, just filling it up 2/3 of the way up, sticking them both in side by side. Make sure that your soil's all the way around. Kind of work it into those little spaces between the plants. You can fit more cuttings, but I find syngoniums, they can grow quite quickly and develop their roots really quickly. And then the other one is the Berry Illusion. Same thing, I have 2 of them. This one here, this is the Berry Illusion, this is the White Butterfly. Very close. This Berry Illusion has lost a lot of its sort of pink color, but there is a subtle, very subtle difference. But these two, you can plant them together or you can do them separately. It all depends, when they get bigger you can have different splashes of colors. So for this one I'm actually going to put them both in the same pot, and I'm just going to use one of these small little 4-inch pots. They're pretty easy when it comes to propagating and caring for, and they're pretty low maintenance, I have found. So for sticking multiple in a pot, as long as you make sure that the pot is big enough. If you're sticking 6 cuttings or more in a pot, you might want to sort of bump it up to, say, a 6-inch. This one here, same thing, water around, make sure all the air pockets are getting a little bit of water in them. There we go. So the next one to propagate is this Monstera addisoni. It did have a little bit of a root, and because it's not a very big plant, not a very big root system so far, I'm just going to be giving it a 4-inch pot so that way it has enough room that it can develop its roots, but not too much that it's going to be waterlogged. And when you do water your plants, that soil is going to kind of settle down and compact a little bit. So it's just be mindful to make sure that your soil levels are filled up enough. There we go. And give it a little bit of water here, all the way around. There we go. Yeah. So ended up having to run out and do a couple errands. So as you can see out back, it's dark. It's already 8 o'clock, but one thing I did do while I was out is leave my cuttings in this tray, and I should have added a little bit of water before leaving, which I forgot to, but they all seem to be doing just fine. It was probably 4 hours that they were sitting in this tray inside, and some of the roots that were in water started to already dry out. So one thing I did was when I first got home, I put some water in here in some cool water, and they seem to be doing fine for now. So the first one here is the Scindapsus pictus exotica. This one here had quite the long root, so I'm just going to be planting this one by itself in a little 4-inch pot. Sometimes I like to put the plants in their soil and then kind of pack it down a little bit and then pull them upward a little, so that way the roots are more facing down into the soil rather than to the side. There we go. Give that some water. Next, the Hedrahelix. So for this one, I'm just going to put in the other Hedrahelix that I have here. I'm just going to use a little poker just to kind of work around the other plants that are already in there, like that, and then just give it a little extra water. And for these ones, this is the Pothos Enjoy. I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cuttings. For this one, I am going to use one of these 6-inch pots. And these Pothos cuttings, you can just kind of work a little spot and stick them just below the soil, like that. So I've put about 8 cuttings around the pot, and now I'll just put 2 right in the middle. Use my little poking stick here. I like to kind of splash around the pot, and that way it kind of evenly soaks the soil. Some of the Pothos cuttings that I leave more on the soil surface, they get kind of loose after a little while, but like this one, they seem to be in there quite well, so they'll hold. The other one was the white butterfly. I have quite a few of these cuttings, so I'm just going to stick it in a little 4-inch pot and then give it a little water. Another one here is the Silver Ann. So I have 2 cuttings, so 4-inch pot for just these 2 little ones as well. You can pretty much fill this one close to the top, and then just stick them in, leaving that soil nice and loose. Same with marble pothos. I just have the one leaf here. I think that was the only one that I cut off. Take the leaf and just sort of wiggle it around till that root's in there. One thing that I found with all these cuttings, it's nice to give them a little bit of a brighter location than you normally would. Not direct sunlight, of course, but just some bright indirect light. And most of all, I found keeping them warm. At room temperature is fine, but if you can shoot for a little bit above, that works really well. We have like an entertainment stand that has a lot of electronics on it, and it does give off a little bit higher heat. So putting them on the top, glass top on that seems to work really well for root development. So for all these golden pothos, I'm going to be putting them in a 6-inch pot. So same thing as the Enjoy, I'm just going to stick them around the soil perimeter, the pot perimeter, just filling it out. You can do less cuttings if you want, or if you want a really big, full, bushy plant that will one day be more heavy and trailing, you can fit more cuttings in there. So I stuck 20 cuttings in this one 6-inch pot, and then I wanted an extra, so I just put one of these large leaf cuttings in its own 4-inch. So I'll have to give that a little bit more water, but as you can see, nice and full. If you want, you can also make it so that you put all your cuttings on the one side of the pot, and if you put that side of the pot towards the light, eventually those plants are, the plant will just start to vine and hang over or grow towards that direction. But one thing to be mindful of is if you do that, eventually the leaves can start pulling the pot over just by the weight of itself. So this pot here is the one that I took previously with all the golden pothos cutting and one enjoy. They all seem to be doing pretty well. Most of them have rooted, but it's quite a full pot. And when I went in the spare room and I picked it up, I could feel that it's quite light and it definitely needs some water. Some of them have even begun to wilt, which isn't really the best thing that you want with cuttings. You can see here one of these cuttings wasn't even in soil because it's kind of hard to see when it's so full like this. So definitely be giving it a little bit more water here. So that's it for these plants that I have propagated so far. All the ones that were ready, they had their roots. They were ready to be put in soil. For all the other ones that I had, such as the philodendron micans, philodendron cardatum, the green heartleaf, a few of those I will be putting in soil once the roots are ready. I probably won't be doing a YouTube video for it, but I will be posting those on my Instagram page at houseplantsgonewild. If you know of any videos that you would like to see, or any plants you'd like to see propagated, or anything that has or hasn't worked for you, feel free to comment down below. I'd love to hear from you and see what's working for you. And yeah, that's it for this propagation video. Thanks for watching.